Today, we're surrounded by a breed of vehicle that looks like it's swallowed the fun, the SUV. But this isn't just a rant about boxy cars. This is the story of how the SUV didn't just join the automotive world, it took over and changed it. And in the process, it killed off the cars that once made driving exciting. This is how it happened, and why it's not just America's fault, but Europe's and Australia's too. The term SUV, sport utility vehicle, used to mean something. It was a machine designed for function, not flair. Think military routes, off-road trails, camping, hauling, the Willys Jeep, the Toyota Land Cruiser, the original Ford Bronco. These were tough as nails machines built to handle terrain, not traffic. They were the anti-car, raw, unrefined, purpose-built. But then something shifted. In the 1990s, America got bored with the station wagon. The family car felt old school, unsafe, uncool. And then the Ford Explorer happened. The Explorer wasn't exciting, but it was big. It was high riding. You could haul kids, gear, groceries, and it gave drivers the illusion of power and safety. From soccer mums to suburban dads, people felt like commanders behind the wheel, even if they were just heading to Costco. In the USA, bigger has always been better. Muscle cars, supersized meals, McMansions. So when the SUV began to dominate, Detroit pivoted hard. By the early 2000s, the SUV wasn't just a side hustle for automakers, it was the moneymaker. Cars like the Chevrolet Tahoe, Cadillac Escalade, and Dodge Durango sold in the millions. Meanwhile, sedans like the Pontiac G8 or sporty coupes like the Mitsubishi Eclipse quietly disappeared. Why? Because SUVs brought massive profits. You could charge more, use the same platform as a pickup truck, and slap in cheap interiors, all while telling buyers they were safer. The Hummer H2 became a status icon. The Toyota RAV4 went from niche to mainstream. Even Porsche caved and built the Cayenne. And just like that, everyone realized if Porsche can sell out, so can we. Sports cars weren't dying because people hated them. They were dying because they didn't pay the bills. Let's bring it home. Australia. This is the land where the Holden Monaro roared, the Falcon GT thundered, and utes were king. We didn't just drive, we raced to Bunnings. But something changed in the 2000s. Sedans like the Falcon and Commodore were still popular, but the writing was on the wall. Rising fuel prices, family demands, a craving for height over handling. Enter the Ford Territory, Australia's first locally built SUV. It wasn't thrilling, but it was practical. And slowly but surely, it started replacing the large sedan in driveways across the country. By the 2010s, the Commodore was fighting for its life. Meanwhile, the Mazda CX-5, Toyota Prado, and Hyundai Santa Fe were selling like hotcakes. Mums loved them, dads tolerated them, and kids grew up thinking fun cars were something from old YouTube clips. Australia's auto industry collapsed in 2017, but truth be told, the death knell wasn't just policy, it was popularity. We didn't want fast sedans anymore. We wanted 5-star ANCAP safety, elevated seating, and a boot big enough for a Costco run. The era of rear-wheel drive thunder had been replaced by AWD compliance. Now let's look at Europe, the spiritual home of precision driving. BMW, Audi, Alfa Romeo, brands that once obsessed over weight balance, corner grip, and engine soundtracks. But somewhere along the way, they gave in. In 1999, BMW introduced the X5. It was powerful, sure, but it wasn't pure. Purists howled, but guess what? It sold a lot. Soon there was the Audi Q7, the Mercedes GLE, the Jaguar F-Pace, even Ferrari, yes, Ferrari, recently launched an SUV. Why? Because people wanted space, height, and luxury. The Nürburgring lap time no longer mattered. The number of cup holders did. Hot hatches like the Renault Clio RS and the Peugeot 208 GTI quietly died off. Lightweight roadsters like the Alpha Spider became relics. Even the Volkswagen Golf GTI, a staple of Euro excitement, is being outshone by the Tiggan R. And let's be honest, who buys a manual gearbox in Europe anymore? Europe's love for tight, thrilling cars was eaten alive by emissions, regulations, lease deals, and crossover culture. So what is it? Why did the SUV win? It's not just marketing, it's psychology. Humans like to sit high. It gives us the illusion of control, of dominance. Being higher up means seeing the road better, feeling safer, looking down on others, literally and metaphorically. Even people who never leave paved roads say they need AWD for weekends. Spoiler, they don't. The SUV gives people what feels like performance, space, capability, and tech, even if they're giving up driving dynamics, weight efficiency, and fuel economy. And car companies know it. They prey on that insecurity. They've created an entire segment where mediocrity sells, where you can put an S badge on a soft roader and convince buyers it's sporty. Let's talk about what we lost. The Aussie V8, the Falcon X R8, the Commodore SS, gone. Japanese coupes, the Mitsubishi 3000 GT, the Nissan Silvia, gone. Affordable sports cars, Mazda RX-8, Toyota MR2, gone. Euro hot hatches, Renault Sport Clio. Ford Fiesta ST, gone or endangered. Even sedans are on life support. The Honda Accord, once a global bestseller, is being outsold by mid-size SUVs 4-1. And wagons, remember those? If you want a fast one now, it'll cost you Audi RS money, or you'll have to import one from the past. Is this our fault? Well, yeah. Car companies followed our wallets, not our hearts. They built what we bought, and we bought SUVs. Australia used to be proud of building its own cars. The Holden Commodore, the Ford Territory, real local metal for local roads. But once the factories shut down and the big rear-drive sedans vanished, a new wave flooded in. And it wasn't just one tide, it was three. And together, they've completely reshaped the Aussie car market. First came the Japanese. Brands like Toyota, Mazda, and Mitsubishi didn't just fill the gap, they owned it. The Toyota RAV4 went from quirky compact to Australia's best-selling car, not SUV, car. And the reason's obvious. It's reliable, efficient, stacked with features, and still under $50,000. The Mazda CX-5, with its sleek looks and polished interior, offered Euro flair without the Euro price tag. Even Mitsubishi, long faded from its Evo glory days, now moves thousands of Outlanders, especially with hybrid appeal and long warranties. Then the Europeans followed, but this time, not just for the rich. Once a Mercedes or BMW SUV was a six-figure status symbol. Now, you can roll out in a Mercedes GLA or BMW X1 for what a Commodore SSV once cost, and they're smart about it. Offer the badge, drop the cylinders, throw in a digital cockpit and Apple CarPlay, suddenly you've got aspirational motoring for the average middle-class family. Audi, Volvo, even Peugeot, all chasing market share with compact and mid-size SUVs that feel more premium than their price tags suggest. They've worked out that Australians want the image, not necessarily the raw power, and they're cashing in. But the most shocking shift, it's China. Mr. Haval, BYD, Chery, names that once got laughed out of dealerships are now making some of the best-selling SUVs in the country. Why? Because they're playing a new game, value per dollar. You want a touchscreen bigger than a dinner plate? Done. Heated seats, 360 cams, sunroof, radar cruise, all for under $35,000? Done. These aren't clunky budget cars anymore. They're feature-packed machines that undercut the Japanese and Europeans by thousands, sometimes tens of thousands. The MG ZS and Haval H6 are everywhere. And now with BYD entering the electric space, China is set to dominate the next phase of SUV evolution in Australia. The average Aussie buyer doesn't care about badge heritage anymore. They want tech, space, and warranty. And China's willing to give all three in spades. The next 5 years, we're going to see a wild brawl at the entry to mid-level SUV tier. What used to be a space reserved for Toyota or Honda loyalty is now up for grabs, and the Chinese are coming in hot. Now let's talk about the other side of the scale. Once upon a time, if you saw a Ferrari badge, you expected a screaming V12, a carbon fibre monocoque, and a ride height that cleared a credit card. Barely. Now, that same badge might be bolted to the front of a 2-ton, 5-seat family hauler with room for golf clubs. Welcome to the new era of automotive excess, ultra-luxury SUVs. Let's not sugarcoat it. This was sacrilege. Lamborghini made tractors, yes, but the thought of an off-roader bearing the raging bull was heresy. Then came the Urus, a twin-turbo V8 super SUV built on a shared Volkswagen Group platform, with more horsepower than a Gallardo and a price tag that makes G-Wagons look like fleet cars, and the world didn't hate it. It sold. It exploded. It became Lamborghini's best-selling model ever Ferrari held out longer. They swore they'd never build an SUV. That was for other brands. But money talks, and so does China, the Middle East, and Beverly Hills. So in 2022, Ferrari launched the Purosangue, their not an SUV, a V12-powered AWD monster with suicide doors and a price north of 700,000 Australian dollars. It's the prancing horse on stilts. Then came Aston Martin, not to be left out. Their entry? The DBX, a British bruiser with handcrafted leather, racing pedigree, and the styling grace only Aston can pull off. It's fast, it's loud, and it's a last-ditch effort to save the brand financially. And surprise? It worked. But no one embraced the SUV transformation more luxuriously than the old-world titans, Bentley and Rolls-Royce. Bentley's Bentayga was mocked at first, an ultra-opulent SUV with quilted leather, champagne chillers, and Breitling dash clocks. But behind the mockery came the money, and Bentley soon realized this was the future. W12 powered or plug-in hybrid, the Bentayga prints cash. And Rolls-Royce? They took it one step further. The Cullinan isn't just an SUV, it's a rolling palace. Think bespoke everything. Self-leveling air suspension, doors that shut with the push of a button, a grille that says, "I own half the eastern seaboard." It's not trying to be fast, it's trying to be sovereign. Why do these brands build SUVs now? Because even the ultra-rich want comfort, practicality, and presence. They want to tower over traffic, even if they could afford to fly above it. SUVs aren't just a market trend, they're a status tool. A Lamborghini Huracan says, "Track day." A Urus says, "I'm the boss, and I brought the kids." We used to laugh at the idea of a Rolls-Royce four-wheel drive. Now it's parked next to the Lamborghini SUV at your local private school. Aston Martin may be more debt than they are today. If it was not for this category, have we gone soft as a customer and followed the evolution of compromise through gadgets and comfort? Could be why the Resto Mod criteria is such a boom right now. Like and subscribe for more content.